And so if he does come back to Philadelphia 76ers and he does play, he is 100% getting booed by the Philadelphia 76ers crowd. Alright everybody, welcome back to NBA Now. It's your boy Dom. We're going to get right into things here today. So, today, we are talking about Ben Simmons. So some very, very interesting news came out earlier today, and that is that he might be staying in Philadelphia. So, now I'll read the first report was Woj. Came out, he said, Sixers officials and Clutch CEO Rich Paul have progressed in talks over recent days on a resolution to bring All-Star Ben Simmons back to Philadelphia in the near future. He goes on later to say that the plans remain for the Sixers to continue canvassing the league for trades, but the possibility of Simmons reporting to the team has increased in recent days. And then it says that, you know, he could be back as soon as this week. Which is very, very interesting because only a few weeks ago, we were talking about how, you know, players on his team wanted to go visit him out in LA and just like, hey, come back, play for us, you know what I mean? Because obviously Sixers trade talks had mightily stalled at that point, and just the Sixers price was not matching up with what other teams were looking to trade, right? And so, you know, the players were looking at that, you know, wanting to go out there and just talk to him, right? Figure stuff out, try and resolve things. Doc Rivers was going on, like, First Take and talking to Stephen A. about it. I want to say, I assume that the GM was issuing stuff, like, statements and stuff. But all through the organization, all they were trying to do was get Simmons back. And he said, no, screw you guys, I'm not coming back. Like, refused to meet with the players, everything. And obviously, we know what has kind of conspired throughout the offseason where, you know, the trade rumors to whether it be the Rockets, the Timberwolves, the Kings, the Indiana, whatever it may be, all throughout the offseason, and the majority of the blame for the Hawks series pressed on him. Now, the fact that this report comes out today is very, very interesting because since, you know, kind of since that whole I'm not going to meet with the rest of the team type of thing that went down for him, you know, we've seen even more stuff to kind of come out, right? We've seen Matisse Thybulle go on, like, JJ Redick's podcast and talk about how he, you know, feel that he did a couple things wrong that really led to the end of the series. We've seen more people critique Embiid for the end of the series. So we've seen some more criticism on the rest of the team, which I wonder if some of that media coverage is maybe potentially swaying Simmons in some sort of way to head back to the team where he's like, okay, you know, it's not the team that's mad at me, they're all mad at themselves too, and maybe he's, you know, finally coming around in that asset of it, or maybe because this man got his money taken away from him, he realized that he actually wants to get paid. Whatever the case may be, it does seem that it's more than likely that he's going to be a 76er this year, which is very interesting, because, like I said, you know, only a couple weeks ago, we were talking about how he's sitting out the whole season, the Sixers are going to get pennies on the dollar for him, and at this point, it's just better that they move off of him for nothing, almost, just to get, you know, at least there was conversations for that, right? That it might be better for them to move off of him for nothing, just to clear the toxicity in the locker room and just get this overwhelming thing off their heads. And I don't know, it's very, very confusing, right? So, I think we all know what Simmons is, but just to read off kind of what he has produced in his career. So, for his career, he's averaged 15.9 points, 8.1 rebounds, and 7.7 assists. This last season, he averaged 14.3 points, 7.2 rebounds, and 6.9 assists. Which, very good numbers, 3-time All-Star. He's definitely done good stuff, right? In the last playoffs, he averaged 11.9 points, so you definitely see a significant drop in the playoffs. He had 0.8 blocks, 1.3 steals, 8.8 assists, and 7.9 rebounds. And then if you even dive deeper into that, when we look kind of in depth into this, we can kind of see how in the Atlanta series, if I can just find where this is. Yeah, so in the Atlanta series, he put up, in the Atlanta series, he put up 4 points, 18 points, 11 points, 8 points, 6 points, and 5 points. So only 2 points above double-digit scoring and no scoring games within 20. Now, obviously, in those games as well, he had 1 block, pretty much averaged about a block, and probably a little less than a steal per game. His assists were super good, though, where he had 7, 7, 9, 9, 5, and 13. So in his closeout game, he had definitely a plethora of assists, but, you know, it does come down to, were you passing too much and not being aggressive, right? When we look at that Matisse Thybulle pass where, you know, Ben Simmons just gave up the wide open dunk, right? And then his rebounding probably could have been a little better, but it was all right. It was 3, 4, 12, 4, 9, and 8 for the games throughout that series, and that's in chronological order for all the stats that I read off from the first game to the last game. So, you know, overall pretty solid, right? And obviously, if they did end up having to trade him, there was ways that they can make the money work. I mean, if you were going out to, say, and get a John Wall, and you felt that the value had decreased, right? You had Danny Green, who's on a $10 million contract, not, you know, the most crucial piece to your team. You can move him. Even Furkan Korkmaz, $4 million contract, you can move him. So you had you had 15 more million you could even throw in with Simmons to boost up the money that you're sending out so that you can potentially get back more younger assets or something like that. So there were ways for this team to definitely make moves with him. But now that it looks like he's coming back, I'm interested to see how this locker room dynamic's going to be, because, you know, Embiid has come out and said, like, hey, you know, not keeping Jimmy Butler was a mistake because, you know, having to leave the ball in Ben Simmons' hand was why we did it, but clearly that's not as successful, right? So I think the locker room dynamic is definitely going to be super harsh on him, and I wouldn't be shocked to, you know, see him play at an all-star level still, but quickly, just, if it was in like 2 months, he just feels that the locker room is so bad that he just can't play with these guys anymore, I could see him just leaving. Now, obviously, he stated like that he has like friends on the team and stuff like that, and I think there's no way that you're, you know, as good of a team as Philly's been without having truly made some like long-lasting friendships on that team, right? Whoever that's with. Obviously, it's different for every player, but that makes sense, right? That's part of the reason why he was like, yeah, no, I'm not, like, I don't even want you guys to fly out to LA because I'm just not holding this conversation. So I'd rather you guys not waste your time to come out here. And part of that was like a screw you Philly, I'm not coming back, but also kind of a, hey, you know, those guys that I do respect, just, I'm not coming back, so just, you might as well just not even do it. It's just gonna be a waste of your time, right? But yeah, I'd expect this locker room to be either very toxic, or we could see, who knows, maybe a quick resolution like it was in Utah when Rudy Gobert obviously shut down the entirety of the league. And then, you know, we heard about the toxicity a little bit between him and the locker room, him and Donovan Mitchell. And then, you know, they kind of have resolved things, and everything's been good since, right? So could Simmons go back to this locker room and be very toxic, and then we're in the same situation in a couple months where he's not playing and he wants to get traded? Maybe his trade value goes up a little bit by then because, you know, teams obviously see him in a better situation than his last, for the most part, his last memory being that pass to just give up the wide open dunk, right? Could we see him come in super motivated to prove everyone wrong? Absolutely. Or could we even see him come in toxic and motivated, right? That's definitely possible, and that would probably be the worst thing, because then that's probably going to cause issues more for the team, even on the court, than just toxicity in the locker room would, right? Or could we see him come in, make amends with everybody, work hard, and, you know, potentially the Sixers come out and compete for a championship? That's absolutely true too. Now we could also see him come back and just be the exact same Simmons that we've seen every year he resolves things, and that happens. So there's really 4 situations that the way that this can turn out. I think more than likely we're probably headed towards some sort of resolution. I think Simmons is still, his time in LA has a timer on it. It's how quick is this thing ticking down now. I think, again, though, even since his first season, the Simmons-Embiid duo has had a timer on it, right? It's been Embiid win now, Simmons win, or window for longer, but not quite as high potential, right? That's kind of how it's always been looked at. And everybody's had their decisions on who they would take. Some people liked the fact that for Simmons, you can build the team in a Giannis type of way and be super competitive for a longer stretch of time to give you more opportunity, right? Or some people like the idea of, okay, Embiid is one of the best big men in the NBA, arguably the best big man in the NBA. We can win a championship now. Why not trade Simmons and surround Embiid with better fit, right? And so everybody's got their side to it. Obviously, nobody knows which side truly is the better of the two. But I think even ever since, after Simmons' rookie year, it's kind of, we've all noticed that at some point this duo won't be together. And I guess, for Philly, the fact that Embiid signed the extension and has shown he wanted to play, and Simmons, even though he might come back, I think it's farther in the way of Simmons is going to be gone, even if he comes back and plays this season and plays well. Probably most likely at the trade deadline or next offseason if he does come back. I think the biggest thing, this is a very positive for Philly, because he's going to come back, he's probably going to play well, and maybe you keep him the whole season and you go and win a championship, and then his trade value is astronomically high. Maybe he comes out and wins Defensive Player of the Year, which he definitely had a possibility to do this last season. I know many people forget because of his play not being, next to Embiid, his play not being conducive to winning basketball in playoffs. But, he was a top Defensive Player of the Year candidate for the majority of the year. Philadelphia 76ers players were amazed that he didn't win it, right? And so he's going to rise. If he's on the court, he's going to rise his trade value. If he's playing, team basketball, he's going to rise his trade value. If he just plays like Ben Simmons, he'll rise his trade value. Because his trade value right now is below himself, right? It's you will be getting negative assets for him, essentially, not negative assets, but you'll be getting worse at this point by trading him more than likely than you will get better. Whereas if you were to call it like a base Ben Simmons value, you'd be getting much better, right? Now the difficulty with trading him is you can't just go get a ton of young players, because again, Embiid's window is win now, so you have to go get win now vets, right? Which means it has to be a star for star trade, right? Which is where that Damian Lillard and Bradley Beal, the fact that, potentially at the end of the season, one of them, or, later in the season, even potentially for Bradley Beal, could open up the possibility to being traded. More than likely, probably not Bradley Beal. For some reason, that guy loves Washington. But, those possibilities, they open up a little bit more if you can wait and trade him at the end of the season and raise his value now, right? And so if he does come back to Philadelphia 76ers and he does play, he is 100% getting booed by the Philadelphia 76ers crowd. It is going to be a hilarious situation to watch, and I can't wait to see that. But yes, I would still expect him to be traded after this season, and this is outright a super positive for the Sixers, because, again, you're getting a 3-time All-Star, a Defensive Player of the Year candidate, and your second best player on your team to actually play basketball for you rather than sit out, which is going to be tremendously helpful for them, even if with all the media backlash and potential locker room issues. Sometimes just having talent wins you games, right? Even you look at Minnesota with Jimmy Butler and Karl-Anthony Towns. Well, we found out later that Jimmy Butler didn't like the way nobody worked in Minnesota. Everybody apparently, according to him, didn't work hard or didn't work as hard as Jimmy Butler felt was needed. Now, Jimmy Butler is a bit of a workaholic, so his standards are probably higher than others. Whereas like Karl-Anthony Towns, who he is just so talented, he might not have to work as much, right? But they still, after Jimmy came back from his injury, ended up fighting into the playoffs and actually beating my Denver Nuggets pretty much in the first ever playing game, before the playing game was ever brought out to be, because whoever won that final game of the regular season became the 8th seed, right? So they ended up making the playoffs after Jimmy came back, even with what we found out later was a toxic locker room. So if Simmons can come back to the Sixers, we were already slotting him as a playoff team, but this then elevates them into a truly contending team out in East. And does it make them just a super good regular season team that I think could have been torn down by some of these teams that have been assembled out East, as the Eastern Conference has definitely gotten much better in recent seasons. So with that said, it's been your boy Dom from NBA Now, and I'll catch y'all later. Peace out.